Hey, what up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. And today we're going to be making some really epic Filipino corned beef. Um, that's typically served on top of rice. It's a staple in many Filipino households. You know, I eat it growing up. I love it. So I hope you enjoy it. We're going to start off with some mushrooms. Okay, we're going to prep as we go along. These were in my fridge. There's no particular variety that you need. I have both brown and white. They're all around the same size to help, you know, uh, with efficiency in cutting. I'm just gonna tail these. Those tails can go into a stock. If I was making a stock at the same time, which I normally am, I would totally put those in a stock. But I'm not, so I'm just going to dispose of those. And I'm really going to put a large dice on these. I do it by cutting them in half, cutting them into strips, rotating them, and then dicing them. I don't know how y'all do it, but you should try it that way. It works pretty well for me, or at least for this dish. Some of those chunks are going to melt away as you saute because they do reduce in size once they release some moisture, but some of them will stay, which is what we want for the end of the dish. We want to see chunks of mushroom in there. Those are delicious, especially after all the flavorings have been fortified in them. So we're just going to continue processing these. Okay, do it however you like. If you wanted to do slices of them instead and you enjoy slices of mushroom, go for it. Don't stick to something just because somebody tells you to do it that way. Everyone has their way of doing things. Everybody has their own style, so whatever suits you and your abilities. At the end of the day, it's going to taste amazing, guys, so not to worry. Just going to finish up processing these. Mushrooms add a really nice earthiness to the dish without being overbearing. So I really, really always try to add mushrooms to my corned beef. They're also hidden in my house, so if my kids like mushrooms, might as well just use them. I know my son does, so I make sure I add them in there because he loves mushrooms, and the more vegetables, the better. All right, next up is our shallots. You can use onions. I prefer shallots in this because they're a bit more delicate. They say shallots taste like garlic and onion. Who am I to tell them wrong? I just like the flavor. If I had onions, I would totally just use onions. The important thing here is that we try to maintain a small dice because we really want to try to cook these down. I want to see these melt in the sauce. So you really want to make sure you're slicing them along the grain and then across the grain, so that you can break those cell walls and help to break those down in your sauce. We're going to spend a considerable amount of time sauteing them and caramelizing them along with the other aromatics. So we want to help things along by making sure that they're cut pretty finely. Now, that being said, if you enjoy the flavor and the texture of big chunks of onion in your corned beef, do it that way. Um, don't allow this recipe to stop you from doing things the way you want to do it. The important thing with this recipe, guys, is to take the time to caramelize it. Um, Really like bring out those flavors and don't rush that process. You can do that with big chunks of onion or small. As long as you take that time and you take away that from this video, then I'm sure you'll render an amazing result. So I do hope that you try this recipe. So yeah, as you can see, I'm slicing it along the grain first, and then I'm going to rotate it and slice it across the grain, thereby getting these really small dices. Some people say you need to cut it across the midsection. Sure, if you want to. I really don't care to. People like Kenji Lopez Alt say that you do. It does result in a more even cut. I believe him because he's a super smart dude, but I just couldn't care to go that far with my cooking because I know that I'm going to be cooking these down considerably. If I get an uneven chunk of onion, it's really not going to bother me at the slightest. Okay, next up is our garlic. We're really just going to smash these and dice them. Um, Nothing elaborate. We smash them to release the essential oils, and then we chop them to get them into a size that's, uh, sort of that allows to achieve a cohesiveness with our sauce. Again, big chunks of garlic. Maybe not the best thing. Again, something I don't mind. I would eat a big chunk of garlic if I, especially if I knew that it's cooked, because garlic tends to get a bit sweet after sweet, sweet after it gets cooked. So but if you're the type of person that doesn't like big chunks of garlic cooked, then yeah, take your time here, like I am, um, and really chop those down. There is a chef technique where you can apply some salt to these, and that will act as an abrasion while you chop through it. It will also help the garlic to break down, release some moisture. Also, a fine option here if you want to take that route. Again, I'm really not that fussy. This dish is not a very refined dish, although I am adding some pretty nice refinements to this. But ultimately, it is a rustic dish, so no need to go all crazy in terms of your cuts here, guys. So yeah, let me just get through this garlic. Of course, we're gonna do one more because I knew we were filming and I wanted to be thorough. And I think we're going to be done shortly after this. I think the next aromatic up, I believe, is a tomato. But let's see. Make sure you got a clean board, guys. Don't leave any remnants. Is it a tomato? Is it a tomato? It's a tomato. This tomato was only really thrown in because it was the last tomato I had on my counter. I didn't want to lose the use of it, so I threw it in. Growing up, I always put tomatoes in. I prefer it. You don't need to put a tomato in. You don't need to put a potato in, like a lot of people put. You don't need to put mushrooms in. You can just use onion and garlic if you wanted to. Not a big deal. This is an opportunity to throw whatever's in your fridge or whatever you want in it, because the point is that, provided that it's diced down, it will cook into the sauce and become its own thing. So experiment. Feel free to experiment. Stick all kinds of stuff in here. Maybe a sweet pepper, maybe a green pepper. You know, if you saute a green pepper with onion and garlic, I believe that's a sofrito. So add that in, or maybe a trinity, one of the two. I don't know, but regardless, it would add an amazing, unique flavor. So I might actually do that the next time I make corned beef. But for today, we're going to stick with the tomato. Clean up our workstation, because it's always best to have a clean workstation. And there it is, guys. Those are the aromatics we're going to be using for our dish today. Take a little drink of my red wine. And there's the anchovy paste that I put in a lot of my meaty dishes, and some tomato paste that we're going to be caramelizing and browning. That's one secret to my Filipino corned beef. That's some port. And then we're going to finish it off with some sweet soy sauce instead of having to add some external sweetness. Now, this corned beef is palm corned beef. I believe it's from Argentina. I could be wrong. I apologize if I am. So we're really trying to stick within the Latin framework here with the port and the Argentinian corned beef. We are adding some soy sauce, but let's face it, soy sauce has made its way around the world. Our oil for today is going to be chicken fat. I always render chicken fat whenever I roast chicken, which we do twice a week. So I always have a ton of chicken fat around, and I use it to cook. Same with this bacon fat that I'm adding to the pan, which will add a very beautiful smokiness to the dish. It won't be up front, but it will definitely be there. And we're going to start things off with sauteing our mushrooms. The reason why I want to saute the mushrooms is because they have a considerable amount of moisture in them. And they have this unique property where after they cook down and they release their moisture, they shrink in size, but they also, they absorb all of that oil that's in there before they cook down. And then as they cook down, they release their moisture and they release the oil too. So you get a good gauge when they're done as to how much more grease you need to put in the pan, or if you need to put any more grease into the pan. So yeah, really I'm just going to keep moving those around, make sure they're browning evenly, cooking down, and in a minute you're going to see them cook down. And there we are. They've reduced in size quite a bit, and you can still see in the pan that there's enough oil in there. It's quite a bit, enough for me to continue cooking. So I'm going to use some of that. This is where I'm going to be putting in the anchovy paste, and we're going to cook that down now, because if you add that too late, you will catch that fishiness, which isn't that pleasant. But if you cook it down, it will caramelize, it will intensify, and you'll get a nice salinity from it without the fishiness. So we're going to get that started. Pan appears to be pretty hot, so that's why I opted to stick in my tomatoes right now. They were going to go in next anyways, but I'm going to throw them right away to help even out the temperature in the pan and begin the rendering of the moisture from those tomatoes. Those will, to a certain extent, deglaze what's going on the bottom of the pan. And I really want to cook these things down. These tomatoes, although I'm not opposed to having a chunk of tomato in a spoon of my corned beef when it's done, I'd rather it be cooked down, and some of those some of those sugars, natural sugars from the tomato, get explored and added to the sauce. So I really want to take some time to cook these tomatoes down and render some of that moisture. At this point, we're going to add in both our shallots and our garlic. Okay, I think I was just going to do the shallots, but then I decided, hey, I'm just going to throw in the garlic right now and keep an eye on things. I guess normally I would have put the shallots in, cooked those down a bit until they're a bit translucent, and then I would put in the garlic. But, shallots are a bit more delicate than onions. So, I figured I'll just throw everything together and keep an extra eye on it to make sure that nothing burns. And to help facilitate the non-burning of our aromatics, I'm going to also throw in a little bit more grease, a little bit more chicken fat. Okay, that will allow things to fry and not burn. And then once I figure that the pan is greased up sufficiently to be able to fry up the paste while it cooks down the aromatics, I'm going to add in now the paste. And we're going to really focus on browning the paste too. As you can see, the aromatics are quite brown. We're going to continue with it and really get them dark, but this is where we want to start the process for the paste. We really want that to turn into like a dark brick red, so that we know that some of those natural sugars have caramelized. Tomato paste is reduced tomatoes, so there's already a level of sweetness to them, but we want to take them just a step further in terms of sweetness. We really want to get some natural sweetness in here to help temper the tomato, all the tomato-ness that's going on in the pan right now. So while that's doing that thing, we're going to do the thing that differentiates a chef from a cook, and we're going to clean. We're going to always ensure that our cooking station is clean and there's nothing around that could be a distraction, or danger to ourselves or anybody else around us. So, guys, when I'm cooking, I'm always having a half my brains on how clean is my environment, and it's a good practice to be in that mindset as well. All right, so here we can see that we're developing a lot of flavor. There's a lot of color going on, darker reds. We've achieved that dark brown, that dark brick red color. So at this point is where we're going to start the deglazing process. This is chicken stock, that I had made a couple days prior from my ultimate chicken soup video. So we're just going to put enough to begin the deglazing. Okay. What I'm really focusing on here is scraping the bottom of the pan, making sure all those little bits, all those toasted bits are removed from the bottom so that nothing burns, and so that all of that flavor gets incorporated into the sauce, and we achieve, a unified sauce, or we start to achieve that. So I'm really taking some time to scrape the bottom, making sure every single inch is deglazed. And then we're going to add in a little bit of seasoning here. This is white pepper. Feel free to use freshly cracked. I didn't have any, so I used this. People say not to use pre-ground stuff. Sure, I use it because it was expensive and I like it. So do you. I'm also going to add in some mushroom powder, and my mushroom powder makes another appearance. Mushroom powder is a great product because it adds salinity without a ton of flavor, at least not flavor that you can put your finger on, so that you can get a good gauge as to where the dish is, in terms of flavor, because salt brings out the flavor in things. So what I like to do is use that powder as a means to add some salinity while I'm determining the flavor, and then salt will be the final touch at the end. That way I make sure I don't oversalt my dish. All right, bay leaf goes in because bay leaf is standard in both a lot of Latin cuisine and Filipino cuisine. It's almost in every dish I know. I'm going to taste it for seasoning. Tastes amazing. So this is where we're going to add in our port. Port is a fortified wine. I believe it's from Portugal, thus port. We're only going to put in a couple teaspoons, okay, and that's going to add a dimension of flavor. We're not using it to deglaze. You don't normally deglaze fortified wines. I'm just going to add it to, again, to give a dimension of flavor and a little bit of color. And as you can see, it almost changed the sauce immediately once I put it in there. This is a great time to put in the corned beef. Okay, that product is cooked. So it doesn't need a whole lot. You don't need to brown this. You just need to put it in. The color from the sauce, from the stew, will come from the sauce. So all you really need to do is heat through this cooked product. Another reason why I love corned beef, it's not fussy, it's somewhat fast, and here we're really just breaking up the chunks. I'm going to add a bit more stock in, so it will help to facilitate the thickness of the sauce and the texture. But I'm just going to help it along and really break that up and try to break up those big chunks of beautiful, delicious corned beef. Oh man, sorry about the splash, guys. I'm always splashing myself with food, so I'm pretty sure if you watch my videos, you'll see that happen on almost every single one. But yeah, I'm really taking some time here to break it up. In the next shot, you'll see that the more stock has been added. I think all in all, I've added about a cup more. So all in all, maybe 2 cups of broth that I've added. And there you go. And this is where we're going to continue to cook it down. So once you've added the broth, now we're cooking it down. And I'm dragging my spoon through the pan to see where it is. If that line collapses immediately, then that means that it still needs some reduction. If it doesn't collapse immediately, then it means that it's approaching that point where it's a sauce and where, for me, where I want it to be. So we're going to let it reduce, and then you'll see once it has been reduced right here where we want it to be. Now, as you can see, that line didn't disappear immediately. It took a second or two before it collapsed, which means that that's where we want it to be. It will continue to reduce, so I'm turning off the heat, and I'm going to hit it finally with a little bit of that sweet soy sauce, literally like a teaspoon. Okay, that's not going to add a ton of flavor. It's going to add some really nice molassy-y sweetness, and then a little bit of soy flavor to bring everything all together. It's actually a really nice way to finish off the dish. It will also serve to add a little bit more color where needed. In this case, it didn't really need it, but it also wasn't going to hurt it. And that was it. All right, and I think we're done. We're going to give it one final mix and a taste to ensure we're on point with our seasoning. And let me tell you, this was one of the most delicious things I've had all week. There's a reason why it's a beloved treasure amongst Filipino families, and you guys really got to give it a try, or at least give it a shot your way. So thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the recipe. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment, tell your friends about it. I promise to put up even more epic recipes, my twists, my takes on things, and just an alternative view on how to cook. And hopefully I can spark that flame of excitement within you when it comes to cooking. Take care, everyone.